All right, with that, I want to introduce our two panelists for today for urban design. There's Kaylee, oh goodness, Keaton. Is that right? Kaylee Keaton, who is design manager for planning and neighborhood development. And also Gerald Warren, who is an alumni of UNC Charlotte, who is an urban planner. And they both work for the city of Concord. So we're so glad that they are with us today. And with that, both Gerald and Kaylee, please introduce yourself more fully and tell us a little bit about yourself as well as your educational background.
Sure. So I'm Kaylee Caton, as you mentioned, design manager for the Planning Neighborhood Development Department at the City of Concord. My background's a little unusual, so it'll be kind of interesting to answer some of these questions. I actually started out in architecture. So I went to NC State University and graduated with my BEDA and my Bachelor of Architecture from there. And then went into an typical engineering architecture firm and worked as an intern architect, became licensed while I was there, but kind of knew that I didn't want to necessarily do that forever. So this opportunity opened up with the City of Concord, and it was really more the path I wanted to go. So they hired me as design manager here. And yeah, we'll get into more of that probably with some of my answers to the other questions. Gerald.
Hello, my name is Gerald Warren. I graduated from UNC Charlotte in 2020. My background is still recently new. I studied architecture for about 3 years at UNC Charlotte, and then I finished up with political science with a minor in urban studies, and then intern a bit in a city planning department. And then I was granted this opportunity here in Concord and I'm here today to help the city in their development. It's exciting to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little about, just an overview, what was the most helpful thing as you navigated your career as an urban designer and city planner?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah.
So I wrote some notes down. As I mentioned, I didn't start in urban planning, been working for 10 years. I graduated much longer ago than Gerald. I've been an architect for 5, and I've been here with the city for 3. So what I put down for what was most helpful, thinking just broad terms in my career, was really networking, which I'm sure people hear all the time, but it is helpful. So networking, being a team player, learning project management skills because those are useful across the board. And then just staying in touch. So it's not just networking and meeting people, but, casually following up, telling them thank you, it was great to meet you. Those kinds of things can really make a good impression. And so I think, I was able to do that, but it also kind of goes both ways. I don't know if you want me to elaborate on any of that or if that's fine.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Gerald, did you have anything to share?
Yeah, sure. For me, it was more, I did write some notes as well. For me, it was just being open to learn for this field. It's just really good just to be open to just learn and research a variety of items that interest you, or even things that may not interest you. I just think it's just good to just be open to just learn and read and research. And it really helped me to really understand the industry that I'm currently in and just better, just be open to learning is very helpful.
Yeah, and I'd add to what Gerald's saying, the planning department, we do a lot of different things. So we're more on the urban design side, but there are a lot of people that deal with annexations and rezonings and, the historic commission here. And we also have like more affordable housing based groups. So an economic development, and then our downtown group. And Gerald's done a great job just in the year he's been here of, touching base with all of those, because it's important to learn not just what we're doing, but all of the different aspects of planning.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. This is a very, competitive world. It's a world based on experience and having that ability to use various, tools and software. Talk to us about what are some of the challenges maybe each of you faced as you were navigating and preparing for this world.
Yeah, I actually skipped this question and came back to it because I was kind of struggled to think of challenges, which I guess is a good thing, but I I guess software, like learning those programs and things, that wasn't as much of a challenge, but for me, I think in my career, time management is always a problem. I mean, I think that's true for everybody, but you usually are asked to do a lot of things and you don't always have time for all of them. So you have to kind of learn how to prioritize. And there's a metaphor I heard that I love that's basically it's about juggling the tasks, but you have to know which tasks are made of glass and which ones are made of plastic. Like what can be dropped and what really has to keep going. And that's been a big part of project management and time management for me is kind of learning that skill. And then unfortunately, something I've still faced in my career as a challenge is being a woman and being the youngest. Maybe not so much anymore now that I'm in my 30s, but when I started, a lot of times I was the only female in the room. Again, this is more in the architecture construction industry, and I was the youngest. And so being able to be taken seriously is hard. And I don't know that I have a whole lot of advice for it. I do know when I started out, I tried to just be a sponge and absorb everything. So when I was given the opportunity to maybe be in one of those big meetings with a lot of important people, that was my time to just take notes and listen and learn. And then when I got more into the role of being a project manager myself, which is where I kind of struggled at being taken seriously because I was still pretty young, just taking what I learned from that time early on and applying it. So it was kind of a long-winded answer, but.
And I like to add on with time management with like what Kaylee said mentioned too. Time management is very important too, and that's something that is still working on today, managing or prioritizing things, maneuvering things and balancing things and just getting used to the workload and your own personal life. So time management is very important. And my biggest challenge is being patient. I need to still work on, being patient and just, go take my time with things and not rush into everything. So that's a challenge for me as well. I'm still learning on being more patient and, getting, just going step by step at a time and everything.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. What do you both like most about your work as an urban designer, city planner?
Yeah, so this one, what brought me into urban design from that world of architecture was that I really always loved the schematic design and design development parts of my job before. And that's really important here in urban design and planning is that kind of comprehensive planning. So we get to do a lot of schematic design, which is just that early design, that brainstorming, that research, getting ideas out, trying to come up with a solution to a problem, but not necessarily having to take it to what I did before, which is construction drawings of actually breaking ground and building something. So yeah, I think that's just what I enjoy, being able to kind of work with all the different departments within the city. So we regularly meet with transportation, engineering, water resources, electric, whether we're working on a small area plan or one of my big projects right now, which is revitalization of downtown with our historic streetscape. So we're about to redo Union Street. So just working with all the departments has been really fun too.
And on my side, I would just say, just seeing our ideas and concepts come to life, like Kaylee mentioned, with, doing that conceptual brainstorming and whatnot, it's very nice to see that process change and actually come into reality. So that's what I like about my career, is seeing the impacts of taking it from a design conceptual brainstorm to actually impacting the lives of the community and seeing what it could look like in the future. And it's very nice to see those changes and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, can you elaborate more on the current project you just mentioned?
Sure. So
If you're
the
allowed
Union
to.
yeah, if you're asking about the streetscape for downtown, yeah. So, and this was maybe where my skills of being a licensed architect kind of came in for the planning department, and having been a project manager before. So when I started almost 3 years ago, they were just getting underway on the streetscape for downtown, and So they wanted me to basically be that design lead, the project manager for the city. Of course, we were hiring an engineering firm to do all the drawings, but I was the point of contact for everything. So like a lot of small historic towns, I mean, Concord's a city of 100,000 people, but we have our original historic Main Street. They're doing, working on revitalizing. And so this for us is a very big project because we are not just sort of making it look pretty and widening sidewalks and adding trees, but we're replacing a lot of the aging infrastructure. So it's mostly a civil engineering project, but there's also new stormwater, new water lines. We're going to do some high technology street poles that have things like speakers and decorative lighting and Wi-Fi capabilities, those kinds of things built in. So it's really exciting. I've been working on it for 3 years and we're just about to break ground. So the contractor has been hired, but there were a lot of complicated things with dealing with a streetscape that was originally built in the 1700s and just sort of has evolved over in time. Obviously, there have been other iterations where things have been done, but we know that we're going to open up the ground and find all sorts of things. So yeah, it's a really cool project. I don't know if it's always what design managers for different cities do in urban design, but it's been really fun for us to kind of take the lead on that. And now engineering is doing more with sort of the construction administration, which is more their expertise than ours, but we're still involved. I know Gerald and I are involved too in just construction mitigation, signage, letting the public know what's going on with the project, telling them downtown's still open, please come, visit the shops and the restaurants and all of that. So it's a big one.
That is great. I'll have to come see it once it's finished.
Yeah,
Sounds
it's gonna
really
be probably
exciting.
another 18 months or so.
Wow.
But yeah, it'll be a neat one.
That's great. I'll open it up to the students who are on the Zoom call today. Does anyone have a question for Kaylee and Gerald? Feel free to turn on your microphone.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Maria.
What's the most challenging thing, or maybe like some advice for someone who is not really like familiar and is looking to kind of get their foot in the door, so to speak, or where to start? Something that speaks to that.
Sure. So Gerald might be able to talk more about what he did kind of while he was in school, but something I thought of with that was, it's easy to say network, but what does that mean? And I was terrible at it in college. I mean, I was always too nervous to kind of go into groups and places where I didn't know anybody. That intimidated me. But something I just thought of that we do a lot within the planning department is public meetings. So if we have a project like a small area plan, we'll have public information meetings. So maybe an opportunity in the city of Charlotte. I know I'm sure they have way more projects because they're such a bigger city than Concord, but even Concord or Huntersville or Harrisburg or some of the surrounding communities, if you follow them on social media or just check their websites every once in a while and see a public meetings going on, that's a really good opportunity to go attend and maybe just introduce yourself to someone, especially if you really don't know anyone in the industry, and you're just trying to that's a lot of work, but especially if it interests you, whatever the meeting happens to be about. We're always there early and we always stay late. So just saying hello, introducing yourself, maybe getting a business card from them and following up with an email and just saying I'm a student and I'm interested in planning or urban design could be a good thing. Like I said, that's kind of a lot of work, but I know it's hard when you don't know anybody, and a lot of times, unfortunately, in your career, it's about who you know. So, yeah.
And Kaylee, where did you say the best place to find those meetings?
So I know for our city, our website has a calendar that will always post anything like a public information. We just recently did a downtown master plan update. And so for that, we advertised it on our website. We advertised it on Instagram and Facebook, just kind of for more local people, things like Nextdoor, but you're probably not going to be on that app for Concord. So yeah, those definitely put the word out. We do public information surveys too. So a lot of times if you see those, there's usually going to be a meeting coming shortly after. And I can't speak to all the other cities. I think I follow Charlotte, so I'm sure I see a lot of the times when they post about those things as well. I know the comprehensive plan. Did you go to some of those meetings for the 2040 plan? So yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Gerald, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I have to agree with Kaylee as well. And, and also find your interests. Planning is very broad. There's a lot of focus in planning. There's urban design like we do. There's the economic development. There's also public health. So it's really important to think about what specialization or what is your interest. And then once you start to figure out what you are mostly interested in, then it's a lot easier to do those networkings or reaching out to those people that do what you're interested in, going to those public meetings or, attending different organizations in the community and then moving forward with the next step. So figuring out what you're interested in and what you would like to specialize in, and then go ahead and move forward with going out into community and reaching out and everything.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, which is kind of related, but maybe a little different. For Gerald specifically, he had reached out to us, I think one summer, just to see if there were any internships, and we didn't have any, and we didn't have any opportunities. But even that kind of cold call of reaching out meant that when his name came up later, or actually when the position opened up, we already had his resume, and I think Angela, who's our administrative assistant, had reached out to him. So there is benefit to just cold calling. It doesn't take too long to send an email and attach your resume. You never know, even if someone doesn't have anything available at that moment, there could be something in the future. So
That's great. Thank you. Maria, great question. Michaela also has a question.
Hi, I was just wondering what you guys suggest doing when job applications in this field require like 5 to X amount of years of experience, when we're obviously like college students and graduate students and don't have that professional experience, but may have experience in other ways that are applicable.
Sure. I would say, first let me admit I don't do a whole lot of hiring, but from my experience, I'll answer the question. I feel like right now, and this might not be true, you guys can tell me, it seems like people are really looking for work, people that want to work. I don't know how competitive it is, but I feel like there's a lot of postings, but they might be, like you're saying, for those 5 to 10 year careers. And if that's all you're finding, I think still apply, but make sure your cover letter is written to really explain that you understand you don't have this experience they're asking for, but here's why I still make a good candidate. Kind of make that argument in your cover letter. It's possible still, because of the way that it works, depending on who you're applying for. There might be an HR umbrella and they're looking to check some boxes, and it's sometimes hard with that because they might look at it and it might not get to someone like me where I can see, oh, this is her explanation, and then this is a candidate worth interviewing. But I think that cover letter really gets important because it's hard on a resume sometimes to explain that. So yeah, and I mean, again, I don't know, don't apply. Hopefully not every job you're looking for is saying 5 to 10 years, but if there are a couple that you're really like, oh, this is such a good fit, this is what I want to do, yeah, just try and make that argument for yourself.
That's great. Do we have any more?
Yeah, and I'll have to agree with that too.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Gerald.
To my experience as well, just apply, even if it does have, X amount of years that you need to have an experience. Just apply, and like Kaylee mentioned, alternate your resume, alternate your cover letter in a way that could be helpful, and just see if it happens. And it's a good way to, see what happens.
Yeah, and I would add to that, probably the 5 year would be one that but if it's saying 10 or more, that's gonna be a harder sell. I know usually almost all of them say to 1 to 2 years of experience, and that like definitely apply. Don't let that stop you. And like I said, 5-year probably okay, but when they're looking for 10 and above, then they might accept someone with like 5 years is what I would guess.
And I'm just curious, and I know Gerald, you did some shadowing. In addition to traditional internships, what other ways could students get connected to local planning offices and just to gain that experience and build their resume?
Yeah, it's really hard, to be honest. A Concord doesn't have an internship program. Just as someone who wants to help students, not necessarily because it's part of my job, I've thought about asking some of the higher ups, like, why don't we do this? And I know it's complicated on our end. We have to go through a temp agency to actually hire, and then we have to pay a fee for the temp agency, and so it can get kind of pricey. And planning here, we haven't really done any like just sort of shadowing where if someone's just like, hey, I have a week and we don't have to pay them, but they just want to kind of shadow us around and see what we're doing. I mean, the complications with that are just everyone's so busy, and so it takes time out of our days to try and coordinate and plan those things. So if it's not something that's priority of our bosses, then it's a little difficult for us just to do things like that. But that being said, it still doesn't hurt to reach out because, and I'm not saying that we're doing it this summer because I don't think we are, but for example, last summer, we had a few people reach out and we did hire a summer intern, sort of specifically did it for, because we thought it would be helpful. I was about to go on maternity leave, so we were able to have her help with a project. So it's still possible, you know, to just reach out and that you might get an internship even if there's not one advertised. But so, you know, from our end, yeah, that temp agency thing, that's sort of all the logistics can be complicated. And a lot of times that's why I think municipalities don't do it.
That's very interesting. In
Yeah.
addition to, you know, your bachelor's degree, Kaylee, I know you have a master's degree. What other types of education or certifications, any type of licensure, do students need to be thinking about to work in this field?
Yeah, so I don't have my master's, but I have
Oh,
my
sorry.
That's okay.
You have
I don't
your
know-
licensed architect.
I don't know all the, you know, all the students that are on here, what their majors are, but
Mhm.
for architecture, you can do a 5-year degree essentially. So I did an extra bachelor's degree in my 5th year. The AICP certification through the American Planning Association is the most common for senior planners or people that are in the planning industry. I don't have it yet because my background is not in planning with architecture. I have to work for 4 years and then I can sit for the exam. So I've got another year before I can do that. But I've been told by my boss and others, you know, it's an important thing to achieve. So if you're wanting to advance or do anything beyond, and it's just good because you learn planning, you know, like I said, my background's architecture, so I get that side of things, but the exam and certification will just help on the planning side. So AICP, just Google search it, you can find a bunch of information on how to go through that process and how long it takes.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Did any other student have a question? I want to make sure that we answer all of your questions today. Because I can keep going if no one else wants to ask anything. Maria, did you have another question?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So, like Jared was talking about, finding like your niche, I'm really interested in like sustainable development and like the environmental impact design of planning and building. Do you guys have any advice or any direction for someone who's interested in that area?
Yeah, so like sustainable design, green development, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Sounds more like environmental planning, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we work in, you know, local government planning, but there's obviously also private companies that have planning firms that you could work for. I feel like maybe that would be a better route where they would have people that specialize more in planning that's based on that. I mean, it's a priority for the city, I would say, but it's not something that we have like a separate group that works on just that. But I think maybe a consultant we worked with was Benchmark Planning, and they might have planners on board that kind of work on urban design with a focus on sustainability. I don't know. I just don't know if any local cities would have like that specific of a niche. But yeah.
Yeah.
That was a great question, Maria. I'm just curious, and this was not one of the questions I sent, so hopefully it won't throw you. But I'm curious about just what does a year look like? Are there certain months where you're developing certain things and other months where you're literally doing something completely different, or is there more consistency from month to month? So
Yeah.
more routine versus variety.
Sure. So in the time that I've been here, my priorities have been the streetscape that I mentioned before. And then there've been a couple small area plans that we've just, mostly because I came on board and had graphic design skills, they were like, well, we'll just do these internally instead of hiring a consultant, which is a lot of times we'll hire a consultant to put a plan together like we did with the downtown master plan, which still involves me because I'm kind of managing it on the city side. But the consultant is doing all of the research and actually putting the document together and the graphic design and those things. So usually, you know, to answer your question, from year to year, whatever those large projects are, we're always moving those ahead. We're always working on them. Some months, you know, the downtown master plan might have been a priority because we knew we needed to finish it up by. And then other months are a little more open. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, I know which projects I need to move forward. On top of those big ones, we just sort of help support the planning department. So, and sometimes parks and recreation, sometimes transportation, sometimes buildings and grounds, because of our expertise in design and our graphic design skills, they might have something that they need us to work on that's really small. Maybe it's just a week or two. So it's kind of one of the things I like about my job is that it does change frequently. So probably about 10% of our time is spent on those little tasks, and then the rest is broken up between the big projects. As one of the big projects finishes up, there's usually one kind of coming in the pipeline. Being in local government, we also operate on the city budget. So we have an idea of what's been budgeted for the fiscal year that we're in. Our fiscal year actually starts July 1st and goes through June 30th. So we kind of know, we meet as a team in planning. We say, well, we want to do this small area plan next year and we want to hire a consultant, but we need this much money to do that. So we know if it's going to come down the pipeline, if they're actually going to start working on that next year, or if it's not budgeted for, it kind of gets pushed out. So we usually don't have too many big surprises. We kind of know what to expect on the big projects, but the little things that the different departments need are definitely kind of comes and goes. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you. In the chat, Jerry asks, are there any positions for sociologists in urban design planning sector?
Not in local government, or not in Concord. I guess I can only really speak to Concord. Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
And Jerry, I mean, are there other positions in addition to sociologists that you're considering? Just for instance, Gerald also has a liberal arts background. So, are you wanting to work within the urban design sector and bringing in your sociology background? Feel free to put that in the chat. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting.
Yeah, let us know. Other types, oh, actually, I have one more question I didn't send you. When you think, Kaylee, especially from a management standpoint of students sending you resumes, for instance, just introducing themselves, it could be they come to a planning meeting. what are some of the key things that you would like to see on their resume to showcase experience or skills?
Sure, yeah, so I'm trying to think. I think Gerald, you might have done this, but including, especially if you don't have a lot of experience, you can kind of include the courses that you've taken. Not all of them, but maybe some of the ones that are more specific to the job that you're looking for. Definitely, and I had one person do this, and I try and be like a nice person, but like, don't send your resume to someone without anything in the email. Because I had like a family member reach out and be like, oh, I know someone who, and I was like, well, have him send me his resume. And he sent his resume with maybe his name in the subject and nothing in the email. And I'm like, well, even if you're just kind of doing that, like someone's like, you don't even know the person, but make an introduction, say, thank you. Like, it doesn't even have to be long. It can literally be, I'm Kaylee Caton, I'm friends with this person and I'm just sending my resume along. Thank you for your help and let me know if I can provide any more information, something quick and easy. Definitely don't just send something without anything else. I'm sorry, you asked specifically about what could be on a resume.
Or what are some of the things that you appreciate to be on a resume to showcase whatever skills or experience the student has?
Right. I'm trying to think. I feel like sometimes resumes can just be so much about what jobs they've worked, but if say you've only worked like retail because you're in college, or I was like a nanny in college, I didn't really work any jobs within the architecture industry. You can do like a skills list. So, and that can go from everything from just your, knowing Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, AutoCAD to, project management or time management. Of course, you need to be able to back those up because they might ask you a question about them. But, I know that's somewhere where you can maybe put a little bit more information in if you don't have that job experience. And then, like I said, possibly some of your classes that you took. And then I know you try and fit it all on one page, but if you've got a little bit of room, I don't think it's inappropriate to do some of just your hobbies, things that you're interested in. It is an important thing, which is why I like working for local government. Like, they want you to have a work-life balance. They don't want you to work 80 hours a week and kind of always be on the job. So yeah, it can just bring more personality to your resume if you put a couple of your hobbies and interests on it.
All right, thank you. And I wanted to follow up with Jerry's former question also about sociology working in urban design. So Michaela added, it might have to do something with affordable housing. And also Jerry said also nonprofits. So
yeah, so we, I'm not necessarily a person to answer this so well, but in our planning department, we have a team that does, oh my goodness, I'm dropping completely on Mary's teams. Their community development. Community development is like their umbrella term for what they do. We work with them very little, so I can't talk exactly to what they do in affordable housing, but they do work with housing. They work with a lot of the big federal agencies, and a lot of what they do is sort of, we've got this money from HUD and how do we manage it and what can we do with it kind of things. So possibly within, it's not urban design, I would just call that planning, but possibly something like that would be more of a fit. We also recently started a nonprofit. This, as far as I understand, the city kind of started the nonprofit just to get it going, and then it truly became a nonprofit that operates on its own as it should, for affordable housing, because that's a big priority for our city council right now. Food insecurity, I just don't think I can speak to it as much. I know they deal more with the housing side. And some of it too is just helping people who don't have the funds to, fix their roof or something that's sort of broken within their house. And so there's also, we have like a construction person that helps manage those projects. Nonprofit, we just started it and they just changed their name. I think it's We Build maybe is the Concord one, that they recently got going. And so they'll work with our department. They'll also work with the housing department with the city of Concord. Yeah, hopefully that helps. I mean,
That's very interesting.
yeah, I think, like I said, every city I'm sure is different. This is my only local government experience here. I imagine some larger cities have an even broader group that work on those items. But I know, I mean, I think affordable housing is hopefully an interest for all municipalities in the Charlotte metro area. It's a hard problem to solve. I know we build a handful of houses every year that are in kind of a rotating fund. So we build a house, we sell it at cost, and then we roll that money into the next house. But you can only build so many doing that. So city council has recently given or allotted a couple $1 million towards affordable housing, which is great. But we're only so many people, so we have to get those projects going, or Mary and her team in our office do. And surprisingly, a couple $1 million can go really quick if you're talking about trying to build multiple townhomes, you know, between buying the lot and doing all the design and then construction. Like, it can go fast, but it's great. It's a great step. And that's what their team works on a lot.
And Jerry followed up saying that he's interested in, or she's interested in, community buildings with programs and parks. So
Programs and parks. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that falls under the planning, can follow under the planning department. Really, it sounds like could follow under a lot of things.
And then we do have community, Parks and Recreation? Do they do their own planning as well within?
Yeah, so Parks and Recreation, they have a senior planner on staff who really helps more with their master plans, and works with consultants to develop master plans for a lot of our parks and our greenways, or any planning involved in Parks and Recreation. Community buildings with programs and parks. Yeah, I think it's possibly more even in like the public housing sector. But like I said, for ours, we do have housing group that works mostly on housing, and it does kind of involve the community more with their group. I see programs and parks. Yeah, definitely a possibility for them so it's called community development, and it's in the planning department.
yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, I mean, you both can answer this question, but I know the government is a very different type of employer. And can you just walk students through the process of going through the application process, the interview process, and how long it actually takes to, start the job after background checks? Because I know sometimes with different government agencies, it can be a little bit lengthier than normal corporate types of jobs.
Yep, that's true. I'll speak to mine and then I'll let Gerald talk to his experience. So I'm trying to think. Mine was a little unique. I came in, I think it was October of 2018, and they had a senior planner position open, but they knew they wanted to direct it more towards this design manager role. And so they kind of had to, I interviewed, or it was more of a meet and greet with my now boss and the deputy director. And then they had to sort of convene and figure out if they were going to retitle the position or if they were just going to bring me on and kind of retitle it after. So it took about 6 months, 6 or 7. Luckily, I was already employed and I had time to wait before they brought me in for, I guess technically before I had to apply for the role, and they brought me in for another interview. From that point, it was probably a good 8 weeks. So they made me an official, I think they had to do all the background checks and everything technically before I got the official offer from HR. So I had sort of the soft offer from the planning department, but nothing was really tied to it until I got the call from HR, and that was probably 6 weeks after. And then once I accepted, the way the city does it is they want you to start at the beginning of a pay period. Pay periods are every 2 weeks, so there's only every other Monday that's kind of available for your start date. So depending on where you fall there, it could be another 2 or 3 weeks before you actually get onboarded and start. And then Gerald, your process is probably a little different.
For me, I'm trying to think. So it really helped out that I did reach out to Concord the year for the internship, because that did help a lot with just getting connected with the employer in that time. And then after graduation of 2020, I think it took, I'm trying to think, because I started in December 28th.
December,
Yeah, so
yeah.
it took about 5 months, 6 months, 5 months.
From when you graduated?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think usually you can bet about 2 to 3 months, honestly, from when you actually apply to when you start. Just because we have to leave the application open for a certain amount of time. And then obviously we have to filter through those to see who we want to actually interview. There's a round of interviews, sometimes second interviews. And then from there, they have to do the background process, like you mentioned. So if you've always lived in North Carolina, it's probably going to be pretty quick as far as doing the background. If you're from another state or you've moved to another state, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get that information. We also require, drug screening like a lot of jobs do. So that's another check the box kind of thing you have to do. And then HR would call with that official, like, we're so happy to bring you on. And then at that point, they're like, okay, this is when we have like a start, one of those Mondays I was talking about. So it could be that following week, or it might be 2 or 3 weeks out, depending. And that's also obviously depending on your availability as far as putting in notice if you're already employed or something like that. I know with Gerald, we were really wanting to bring him on pretty quick. So even with that, I think it was probably still a 2-month process.
Yeah, I mean, so that tells me, I mean, as fellow students, get started early because that's a much longer process than other types of organizations. So be thinking ahead.
That was actually, I think, something I had written down at some point. What I like least about my job is, fortunately, I mean, there's reasons why things are put in place, but with local government, things can move slow because there's a lot of just checking on things. There's a lot of processes that have to be followed to a T, and so that can just be one of them. Things moves a little slower than they do when you're working in the private sector. So.
No, thank you. And just for the sake of time, I'll just ask one more question and then open it up again to the students. But what additional advice would you have for students, either at the bachelor or master level, looking to get into this field? If you could go back and do it again, what would you advise?
Oh goodness, Gerald, do you want to start that one? If you could go back, would you change anything?
Well, I'm still learning, and I would say some last minute advice is just again, figure out your interests, what you like, and where do you see yourself in the future or whatnot. And it's just really good just to know your interests. Again, like I mentioned before, just try to do some time management, like Kaylee mentioned too, start, reaching out to different organizations, different people that you find interested to reach out to. And I also say just, time management, it's really helpful to have.
Goodness, if I could go back and change or do something different. It's hard. I think it's something I've developed over time, but it is sort of more confidence. That is something that just sort of comes with being more comfortable as you become a professional and you're working in whatever industry you decide. But I guess trying really hard not to doubt yourself too much, like even if you are a student and you just have the background experience from what courses you've taken, you still have something to bring to the table. That being said, it is important to know when to just sort of, like I said earlier, be that sponge where you're just soaking things up and kind of listening. Trying to think. I mean, like I said, the networking, and I use that term broadly because it could be just attending a meeting, like I said, it could be, a friend of a friend that happens to work for a municipality, or whatever industry you're looking for. Sort of make that initial introduction and make a good first impression. And then don't be afraid to follow up. It doesn't have to be that evening. It could be a couple days later. And then, say you never hear from that person, I wouldn't pester them, but 5 months later, 6 months, whatever time frame you have, just, say hi, because we are busy. And so it's not that we're not thinking about, potential for an internship or something, but we may have forgotten. So just, it doesn't hurt to say, hey, I'm just reaching out and update the person that you're speaking to on maybe what you've been up to since you last spoke or something like that. So, and I know from even though it was a little while ago, it's difficult to find time to do all these things when you have your course load from school to deal with, especially depending on your major. So you kind of already have to start that time management of, well, what can I prioritize? And I think unfortunately it kind of depends on everyone's individual situation. Maybe you only have one night a month that you can attend some sort of public meeting, or maybe you have a couple hours that you can devote to just emailing, cold calling kind of things. I think every website for the cities around here have contact information on them. So yeah.
And I know one thing that was helpful for me, it was taking elective courses that were going to be helpful for my career. I knew that when I was in architecture, or when I was in my undergrad, my minor was urban studies, so I took a lot of courses to learn more about city government, as well as, architectural courses to help me with studio and, learning about, it was architectural, detailing, working in programs. And then even when I did political science, I also did my focus on, municipalities and, just learning more about that. So it does help to take, elective courses if you do have room for that. That will be helpful for your interests and, what you would like to do in the long run. Even I know a lot of students have been on econ, but I remember taking micro econ just to, it was out of curiosity, as well as just learning about, how things work, and it can be helpful just to take elective courses that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. With that, I'll just open it up to students again if they have any follow-up questions. Ask questions, everyone.
I was gonna say, if there aren't any questions, I'd be curious if everyone wrote their major and what year they're in the chat. Just
Yes,
I don't
please
know
do.
If that's something you guys are willing to share.
And I've also put your LinkedIn profiles in the chat, so I hope you don't mind if they can reach out to you,
No, that's
connect with
fine.
you
Yeah.
via LinkedIn.
Yeah, so Michaela, you're right on track. I didn't know if we had anyone that was, you asked about the sociology and
Mm-hmm.
just completely different. So current masters of urban design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I don't have anything extra. I didn't know if there were any architecture students or random, someone that was just in business or something, but yeah.
Well, as you all put your degrees, can we give Kaylee and Gerald a big virtual round of applause? And I'm going to go ahead and stop the video.